Okay, welcome to another edition of Citadel GrayLine. I'm going to be co-hosting today as we enter another edition. We got Jeff Hartsell with the Post and Courier with us today.
Good to be here, as always.
Yes, always great to have you, Jeff. And we're going to first discuss the Wofford football game that we had on Saturday at home, and we'll talk about a few things there, and then we'll get into things going on in the basketball world, and we'll see what anything else comes up. So once again, thank you for joining us, and we'd also like to thank Toast for hosting us here in Mount Pleasant. And so, Jeff, the Wofford football game, the
Wofford game
of the year.
Yep, the last game of the year, and it really makes you think of what could have been for the Citadel team this year. They end up 6-6, 4-4 in the SoCon. So a season of such highs and lows to end up at 6-6 is kind of strange. You know, it leaves you with the strange, unsatisfied yet, having memories of such great wins like Georgia Tech and Furman. So really a strange season, a season of what could have been for the Bulldogs. They end up losing 31-11 to a really good Wofford team on Saturday. As we mentioned last week, the Corps of Cadets was not there. I don't think it would have made a difference in the game. If the Citadel had got off to a good start and got the crowd into it, maybe there's a little impact there.
Right.
But the atmosphere was definitely not the same without the Corps. I thought the fans and alums did a good job with the tunnel.
Right.
Sort of a block L. It looked like Citadel.
There you go.
For the players to run out through before the game. But it would have taken one of the best efforts of the season to beat that Wofford team, and Bulldogs didn't have it in them after a long 12-game season. So, wins over Georgia Tech and Furman in contention
CSU?
for the SoCon CSU in contention for the SoCon title until the final weeks of the season. And as I mentioned earlier in the year, I felt like if they got to the Wofford game and it was a meaningful game, it would have been a good year for the Citadel. And it was quasi-meaningful by the time they got to the end. They had an outside shot at making the playoffs if they had won that game. Obviously, they would have finished with a 7-5 record, which I think only they would have been the 19th team in Citadel history to win 7 games. But they just came up short of making that happen. So it was a good senior day. 19 seniors played their final home game, including the transfers Remus Bulmer at slot back and Aaron Reed at linebacker. And I thought Brent Thompson really hit a home run with his 2 transfers this year. Last year, I think they had 4 on the team, and they all contributed. But this year, those guys were mainstays. Remus Bulmer, I thought, was the best running back on the team this year. And Aaron Reed ended up, I think, 4th in tackles, number 3, if you're not quite sure who he was, number 3 in the lineup there. So, it really hit a home run with those 2 guys. And I know Remus will be proud of his connection. He's already said so on Twitter with the Citadel for the rest of his life. And really happy for the way things turned out for that young man. His father did not get to come to see him play this year. His father had been in jail since Remus was 5 years old, and he got out of jail last year. And they were hopeful he'd never seen his son play in high school or college. They're hopeful he can make it to a game this year, but he was not able to make it. But I'm sure he watched on TV and all that kind of stuff, and was very proud of Remus. So some other seniors who played their final game was Drew McIntyre, the offensive lineman, and Denzel Wright, 2 starting linemen, and Jacob Godak, the fine place kicker. So those are among the 19 seniors who played their final games.
Yep. Great times during the season, and then some down times. But overall, they got to be proud of what they accomplished this year.
Right. If you remember Brent Thompson, when the preseason polls came out, and they were picked 7th, he said that was a flat-out joke. And he turned out to be right. They tied for 4th.
Yep.
But not as right as he almost was. You know, he almost had a team that could contend for the SoCon title. You look back at the Sanford game, 4 overtime loss, the Chattanooga game, where they had a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. Those 2 games go the other way, and the Citadels sitting right there with the playoff bid and all that good stuff.
And the fluke VMI game.
And well, I don't know about fluke. VMI played awful good that day, and that leads us right into the playoffs. Wofford got the automatic bid, and they will play Kennesaw State at home.
That'll be a good game.
Kennesaw State from the Big South went 10-2 this year. Although their schedule, I haven't looked at it, but from what I read, was not the toughest schedule in the world. And Kennesaw State did beat Wofford in the playoffs last year, so that'll be a rematch. And then Furman was thought to be on the bubble, but they did get an at-large bid, and they will open up against Austin P in the first round of the playoffs. Austin P is from the Ohio Valley Conference, and they actually lost to East Tennessee State this season, which ended up being the last place team in the SoCon. So you have to think Furman might be a favorite in that game against Austin P.
Interesting.
So those are the only 2 teams from the SoCon that made the playoffs. Chattanooga lost their finale against VMI, which knocked them out of all contention. And, of course, the Citadels lost to Wofford, knocked the Bulldogs out of playoff contention. And I want to give a shout-out to South Carolina State and Buddy Pugh this year. I thought they got robbed in the playoffs. They did not get a bid. They were 8-3, co-champions of the MEAC, and they beat Wofford. So I thought they had a really strong resume to get into the playoffs, but they were not one of the 24 teams in the playoff field. But Buddy Pugh was named the MEAC Coach of the Year, and their fine quarterback, Corey Fields, who's from Baptist Hill High School, was named Rookie of the Year in the MEAC. So I think there's good days ahead for Buddy Pugh and SC State, and what he survived up there with the financial crisis the school went through. Was really remarkable to come out of that and have an 8-win season this year. Good for Buddy Pugh, and I wish they had a playoff stage to show people how far they've come.
Right.
So, that's the playoff situation. And then the all-conference team came out on Tuesday, and the Citadel's Willie Eubanks III was named the SoCon Defensive Player of the Year.
Rightly.
And really well-deserved, I thought, for Willie. Led the team in tackles, the most tackles by a Citadel player since the year 2000.
Wow.
And second in the league in tackles. Also high up in tackles for loss and sacks. And really just an impact player all season long for the Bulldogs. So well-deserved honor for Willie. And let's see if I can remember who else made all-conference. Raleigh Webb.
Okay.
Made the coach's first team all-conference, and that's
impressive.
Unusual for a receiver from an option team. And he had only 30 catches, which is a lot, but not when compared to some of these passing teams in the league.
Right.
But his touchdown production and just his impact, I think, put him over the top with the coaches. So he made first team. Drew McIntyre made second team.
Okay.
And let's not distinguish. Let's just go through Raleigh Webb, Drew McIntyre, Chris Beverly, Willie Eubanks. Who am I missing?
Kodak?
No. I have the list right here. So let's just read it and make sure we have it right. Raleigh Webb, Joseph Randolph II, defensive lineman, punter Matt Campbell, Drew McIntyre, Chris Beverly, and Hassan Block, the linebacker, made the all-freshman team.
Great.
So Bulldogs were well represented on the all-conference team. I voted for VMI's coach, Scott Wackenheim, as Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
And he did win Coach of the Year by his colleagues.
Good.
The media pick for Coach of the Year was Josh Conklin from Wofford. And then Wofford quarterback Joe Newman was the consensus Offensive Player of the Year, and Willie Eubanks was the consensus Defensive Player of the Year.
Okay.
So I thought the choice for Offensive Player of the Year was a little harder than the choice for Defensive Player of the Year. Willie was pretty clear-cut Defensive Player of the Year, but Joe Newman, the Wofford quarterback, ends up winning the Offensive Player of the Year award. So that's how and we should mention Blake Jarasati He's a Wofford lineman from Bishop England High School. He won the Jacobs Blocking Award, which goes to the top offensive lineman in the league. So good stuff there for Blake and his family here in the Charleston area.
Right. Yeah, that's all good stuff. Going back to the alumni or anybody that wanted to go on the field there to do the, what do you want to call it, the L formation for the Citadel football team. I read that was the first time since 2004 that happened, where the cadets weren't there for a football game on furlough. And then I'll tell you, the faces on the kids, the little kids, and well, actually the adults too.
Maybe that's something that should become a once-a-year tradition. Let the fans form the Block C. And I'm sure if that were to become a thing, more of them would come out and help form that Block C. So maybe on Parents' Day, let the fans and the families form that Block C and be part of the show. So it's a good idea.
I think that was pretty cool. Maybe the freshmen can be on the outside of the C and the non-cadets on the inside.
Yep.
However you want to do it, but that was a lot of fun. Everyone seemed very excited about it.
Good.
Yeah, and okay. So after the break, we'll take a quick break. We'll go and we'll talk about the basketball team.
Okay.
And some other things that might be coming up. But before we go to break, I just want to let you all know that Citadel GrayLine is delivered by IPS Packaging. So for all your packaging supplies and automating needs, call IPS Packaging. And automation. The phone number is 800-277-7007. And you can learn more about them at ipac.com. And iPac Packaging and Automation is a proud Citadel sponsor of all Citadel athletics. And then also, we'd like to thank you, Toast, here in Mount Pleasant. Excellent place to come and eat. They also have very good drink specials if you're interested in that during happy hour, Monday through Friday from 4 to 7. They'll give you the $2 house liquors and wines and $5 martinis. They have $2 mimosas and apps. Certain apps are on sale for $5. So come on out. They also have great music. And please sponsor support the sponsors of Citadel GrayLine, IPS Packaging, and Toast. All right, we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to the Citadel GrayLine. We're here with Jeff Hartsell, and I'm Paul Evangelist. And we'll talk a little bit more about closing out the football season.
Right. There was some news after the game on Saturday. I was able to ask the quarterback, Brandon Rainey, and receiver, Raleigh Webb. They're both eligible for a fifth year next year, and I was able to ask them both if they plan to come back, and they both indicate that they do. So Brandon Rainey and Raleigh Webb should be back next year for the Bulldogs, which will give them a real head start. Don't have to worry about that quarterback position for another year, and having Raleigh Webb back will be a huge boost for the receiving core. So that was good news for Brent Thompson that both those guys plan to come back for their fifth years. And then the offensive line will lose Drew McIntyre and Denzel Wright. So they'll have to replace two starters on the offensive line. I know Terrius Drayton, the young man from James Island, he'll probably be one of the new starters on the offensive line. Don't know if he'll be at center or move to a guard position, but I think he's in line to be a starter. And then in the backfield, everybody comes back except for Remus, I'm pretty sure. So they should be pretty well set there. On defense, the major loss is Joseph Randolph, the second, and Aaron Reed, the transfer linebacker. Other than that, I think most of the contributors will be back. So not heavy losses in this senior class.
Not bad at all.
Obviously, they'll have a new kicker next year when Jacob Godek departs. I'm not sure who that will be.
I don't think we have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
We always seem to have good,
I think
good
there's a
kickers
pipeline.
and punters.
So,
Thank you, Jeff Davis.
So signing date comes up in December. They plan. Brent Thompson told me he plans to sign about 10 overall. Maybe 7 or 8 of those will be signed in December, and another 2 or 3 in February. So, yeah, that'll be coming up quick. So
yes.
The Citadel coaches are hitting the road as we speak, firming up this recruiting class. And I'm sure they're working on next year's class already as well. So that'll be coming up in just a couple of weeks. We'll have some news on who the newest Bulldogs are.
So next year has a lot of promise to it. There's a little bit of a chip on our shoulder, I would assume, hoping to get past a 6-6 record this year. I think next year.
Yeah, that's one thing you can say about Brent Thompson's tenure. You know, obviously in his first year, they went 10-2 and won the SoCon championship back-to-back after Mike Houston's SoCon championship team. But in the 3 years after that, he's been right around 500. So I know he wants to break out of that. I don't know if you call it a rut or what. And they were so close to breaking out of that this year. So with Brandon and Raleigh back, I think they'll have a head start. Maybe the schedule, I don't have the 2020 schedule in front of me. Maybe it lightens up a little bit. I know Charleston Southern will be on it.
But not Townsend and Elon. Or at least
not sure.
Teams as
I think Elon owes them a trip back. I'm not sure if that's next year. They're done with Townsend. They've played them twice.
Yeah.
But I think Elon owes a trip back. I'm not sure if that's next year or in
the
following year. Yes. So, maybe the schedule eases up a little bit. There'll be at least one coaching change in the SoCon. Mercer has parted ways with Bobby Lamb.
Wow.
Bobby was there for, I think, 7 years and really restarted the program. They had been dormant for a long time and then restarted it with Bobby Lamb. But they were never able to – they were always seen as the team that was on the come, but they never made that breakthrough under Bobby Lamb. And there's – the facilities are there. The quality of the school is there. And they're right in the middle of fertile recruiting ground there in Macon, Georgia. So, I think it's kind of a sleeping monster there at Mercer if they can find the coach that can take him to that next step into contention for a SoCon title.
Sleeping bear.
So, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for
SoCon's always tough.
For the Citadel.
Yeah. Yeah. And then as far as the team, I think another chip on the shoulder was losing that VMI game. That's going to be a big thing, I would assume, next year.
Yes, it will be. They'll be wanting that Shako back in a bad way. VMI should be, their coach Wackenheim, as I said, did a great job in reviving that program. He's actually, this is the final year of his contract. And he has not been renewed or extended yet. So I'll be surprised if VMI decides not to renew him after the job he did this year. But you never know. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as well to see if he gets renewed or extended at VMI. But they'll have the quarterback back, and I think the running back who led the league in the rushing, Alex Ramsey. Not sure what year he is. VMI will be worth keeping an eye on next year for sure.
Yeah.
And the Citadel will have to go there to get that Shako. Go to Lexington.
Only fair.
So,
They took it on our turf.
And I'm sure they'll have a seat in the front row of the bus.
Nice.
On the way back.
Very good. All right, so want to shift gears
to basketball? Sure. The Citadel had a home game with Brevard this week and won by about 30 or so. Brevard's a Division III team, so that was expected. But the real news is the road trip last week, where the Citadel won 2 out of 3 on a 3-game, 2,700-mile road trip.
Wow.
They won at Southeast Missouri State. Then they lost to Illinois of the Big Ten, which has a 7-foot, 290-pound freshman on their team.
Crazy.
Who's going to be really, really good. And then they went from Illinois to upstate. Is Poughkeepsie, New York in the upstate?
Yep.
They went to Poughkeepsie, New York to play Marist and were able to win that game. So any road trip where you get 2 Division I wins out of 3 games is a good road trip for the Citadel. And this team has really played its best ball on the road so far this year. You remember the game at Georgia?
Right.
They took Georgia to the final minute, and then they won at Southeast Missouri State and won at Marist. So I think some promising performances for a young team. And they won those 2 games on the road trip basically without Hayden Brown, who got injured early in the Southeast Missouri State game. Okay. And so he missed the rest of that game, did not play at Marist, and did not play Tuesday night at home against Brevard. Okay. So he did his hamstring, so they're trying to give him plenty of time to get back, and he's been their top scorer so far this season. So the big thing is to get everybody healthy for December 4th. That's when ETSU comes to town for the SoCon opener for the Citadel. And so against Brevard, Hayden Brown was out. Freshman point guard Rudy Fitzgibbons was out. Jackson Gammons, the freshman guard, was out. And Alex Reed, the forward, was out. He was sick. So they had 4 regular contributors out for that game. So Duggar Baucom really wants to get all 4 of those guys back healthy for the ETSU game. So they can be at full strength against what looks to be maybe the best team in the league this year.
Oh boy, yeah, that'll be exciting to see how they're.
But I think it's been a promising start. They're only 3-4 right now, but they've had some promising performances. Fletcher AB, the freshman guard, is really a good shooter as advertised. He's only going to get better as he gets more experience. I think Hayden Brown is going to have a breakout year if he can get over this hamstring and be healthy for the rest of the year. Kalen Harris is getting back. You know, he was a sort of a star as a freshman, and then has been injury plagued since then. And so if he can stay healthy, I think he's in line for a good year. And then of course, Caden Rice, the 6'6" shooting guard, had 27 points at Marist. And if they can get consistent shooting performances from Caden night in and night out, I think the Citadel can be tough to beat in SoCon play.
That would be beautiful, huh?
Yeah.
Have a nice, good basketball season this year. Awesome.
But I think it's going to be a fun team to watch, and I think they'll be competitive in a lot of games, even if they don't win a whole lot of them, because they have 6 freshmen and 2 transfers, so 8 new faces on this team. So it might take a little while to put them all together. The 2 transfers are Eddie Davis from Las Vegas. He played at Southern Miss, and then he played at Hartford and also had an injury-plagued career, but he's done really well so far. Had his first double-double against Brevard and really played some important minutes in those 2 road trip wins. And then the other transfer is Tyson Batiste, the point guard from Central Connecticut State, and he's done a good job filling in for Lou Stallworth. He's not the natural scorer that Lou was, but he's also a good assist man, gets him into the offense, and is a really good rebounding guard. Okay. So he has his own strengths as well. So I think Duggar did a good job in finding those 2 transfers to come help this team out.
Excellent. The 3-point line got moved back this year. Does that have any effect yet during the season?
I think across the board nationally, 3-point shooting percentage is down a little bit, but I don't think it's going to stop anybody from shooting threes. Yeah. You know, the teams that believe in that are still going to do it, like the Citadel, and so yeah, I think the percentage might go down a little bit, but not the 3-point rate. I don't think it'll affect that much at all. It's about it's the international line, so it's up to a foot behind the old line, depending on where on the court you are.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to the Citadel, if you go to McAllister Fieldhouse, you can see both lines still on the court. So you can judge for yourself how much further back and how much more difficult the shot is. But the teams that believe in the 3, it's not going to slow them down at all, I don't think.
Very good. All right, well, I think that concludes this episode of the Citadel GrayLine.
I think we've about covered it all.
Excellent. Jeff, thank you so much for being here. Kyle Weaver will be back next week to co-host with Jeff. And also like to thank John Roll for having us do this show. And then, of course, our sponsor, IPS Packaging. Make sure you sponsor those guys. Give them a call or go on ipack.com. And then Toast. Thank you so much for having us here. Great place, great location here in Mount Pleasant, right off the Isle of Palms connector. And everything else, just y'all have a happy Thanksgiving and be safe wherever you're traveling or staying home. Just be safe. I think tonight's a big drinking night with kids coming back and hanging out with their friends from school and everything. So stay off the roads and be safe. And hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Paul.
All right. Y'all have a great day. Bye.